We now welcome the senior staff writer and podcaster at The Ringer, host of The Ringer NFL show, and The Ringer's Philly special, Sheil Kapadia, an absolute favorite in my household. I can tell you that, Sheil. I have not missed an episode probably for the last 6 years. If you're on it, I listen to it. So it's so good to have you here on Scoop City. I know this is the first time you're meeting Chase. Chase, Sheil, Chase, how you guys doing?
What's up, my guy?
Doing well. Good to be here. Glad to be a part of your family, as always. You know,
always. Uncle Sheil, we love you.
I love it.
All right. Well, my household's all uptight because this Jalen Hurts news, to me, look, 2 weeks in concussion protocol is frightening. We're headed into the playoff weekend here, and I know things are getting better by the day. But do you feel like we're at a point right now where we're in the clear and Jalen should be good to go? Do you think we've got good news?
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. You go with the limited practice, then you get the full practice, then you come back the next day with no symptoms. So they were in that weird spot where he wasn't going to play anyway in week 18. So I think that was probably part of it. Now, what does he look like when he comes back? I mean, it was a month ago we were talking about A.J. Brown and this passing game and a terrible game against the Panthers and chaos. And after that, they had one good game against the Steelers. And then Jalen Hurts leaves the next week with a concussion. So as I'm looking at this Eagles team and zooming out, I do think the passing game is definitely a question mark going into the playoffs.
Wow, I knew I liked this guy.
I was going to say, as soon as you said that, Chase is going to jump on you. Go, Chase. I know what you want to know.
I think that for me, even during the win streak, right, of the Eagles, when Sirianni buzzed his head after bye week, they came back and they'd won so many games in a row and still rolling. What do you think probably when it comes to Jalen Hurts? Like, what do you think he struggled with this year specifically? Because I hate to say it, and Eagles fans hate me on social media, but I just call it like I see it. There has been regression in the pass game. There was regression with A.J. Brown not throwing him the ball. There was regression with Devontae Smith not getting the ball until the one game. Everyone's like, see, he can throw, he can do it. There's going to be 21 days off between the last time he played and this game coming up. What were the weaknesses? Like, what did you see specifically covering him?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things with Jalen Hurts, like areas of the field where he is not comfortable being aggressive throwing the football, the middle of the field. I mean, you look at a team like the Lions and Jared Goff is ripping those in, breaking throws week after week after week. And you just look at Jalen Hurts, regardless of who the offensive coordinator has been, that hasn't been a big part of what they do. Other stuff like under center play action. You know, you see a lot of offenses incorporating that. No one, I don't know if no team does it less than the Eagles, but they're certainly in the bottom five. So I think what happened with the Eagles is the first time the Eagles played the Packers, week 1, he's turning the football over. And that was the story of kind of the first month of the season. That changes. They become a running team. He doesn't turn the football over, but now you see what you might call turn downs on film where that ball could be
wide open.
Guys are open, and he's prioritizing don't make the big mistake because we've got an awesome defense. We've got an awesome run game. So those are some of the things, and it's about finding that balance. You don't want him to turn the football over, but you also don't want him to leave a lot of plays on the field either. So I think that's going to be the balance. Can he strike that over the next week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, whenever this playoff run ends?
You know, I'm not the biggest stat person, but I was looking over at some of it for just where the Eagles fall and rank offensively. And I blindly looked at it thinking it would be really good, right? They're the Philadelphia Eagles. They're one of the best teams in football. Their numbers are not good, right? They're statistically, offensively, with the roster that they have, they are not great. So my question for you is, do you think they're at a point now, from what you're observing of them and just knowing them so well, where we're now going to see this team level this off with where the roster is going to start matching some of the stats where it's going to go in their favor?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the roster, and even just looking at this game against the Packers, it's just like, this is the most loaded offensive roster the Eagles have had in my lifetime. I mean, you could go position by position, who has the edge, Eagles offense versus Packers defense, and you're giving it to the Eagles offense every single place. And so I have no questions about the offensive line. I have no questions about the running back. I have no questions about the wide receivers. So now it's scheme play calling, Jalen Hurts. Are those things going to be good enough? Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, are those things going to be good enough? Because you're right, Dianna, even the nerd stats that I like to look into, this is like, it hasn't been better than the previous offenses they had. And the big experiment was supposed to be bring in Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. It's going to look different. You're going to be seeing upgrade. The biggest two differences have been Saquon Barkley, one, and number two, the defense. The defense has went from one of the worst in the NFL to one of the best in the NFL.
And speaking of Saquon Barkley, to me, right, like could have had the record. They decided to sit him. I'm okay with it because they prioritized deep run in the playoffs versus a game and a record. How do you think he's impacted this team? Because when you really look at it, at the first 4 games of the season, I believe they were 2-2, and Jalen Hurts was averaging about 38 pass attempts a game. And in this 10-game, 11-game win streak, he's averaged like 21. So you can see they really turned the corner and said, we're going to lean and rely on Saquon Barkley. What have you seen from him this year?
Yeah, these are the two most run-heavy teams in the NFL, the Eagles and Packers. When you just look at it on first and second down, that's what they want to do. I mean, listen, I can't go back on what I said because I was one of these guys. I don't know if you pay the running back that much money. Is it the best use of resources? I'm that nerd that everyone is always mad at. Shut up,
you're
nerd.
Joe Shane.
Yeah. Be easy there, Dianna.
Back.
Yeah, that's a little too far. Okay, settle down. But I looked at it and I said, I don't know. And then I just watch him week after week. I watch him live and then I watch him on film. And this is the best single season performance by an Eagles offensive player I've ever seen since I grew up young as an Eagles fan, come back, work in the market. I mean, it's not just the home runs that he hits, that the highlights, the backwards turtles. It's like a 7-yard run where you slow it down and you're like, there's nothing there. Wait, is he really going to trust this? All of a sudden, he makes one jump cut and he's gone and it's 7 yards. So he's been incredible. He's refreshed now. I think his approval rating in Philadelphia might be higher than any other athlete right now, honestly. And he's only been there for one season.
I feel like Bryce Harper owns that crown. If I'm not mistaken, would you say that Bryce is probably the most beloved?
He's definitely right there.
Right? Like it's probably, they're all in there together, but Saquon may be the most popular for sure at this point. The person that wasn't very popular there for a minute was Nick Sirianni. Is he a good coach?
What a question. What a question.
I put him in sort of the middle tier of coaches. Like I did a ranking on my podcast, like, all right, if you replaced him with this guy, would they be better or worse? And I think I had him around 11 or 12. And it sounds so stupid to say because you can just point me to the Pro Football Reference page and say the guy has won 70% of his games. He's been in the playoffs all 4 seasons. They've gotten to a Super Bowl. What more do you want from him? And I can't really argue with that. I just look at the success of the team. And like I said, number one, it's the roster. It's the personnel, specifically on offense, that I think you could bring other coaches in, and I think the offense would be better. That's just being honest. Eagles fans are going to be mad at me when I say that, but I think that's one. And then two, you look at what coaches are asked to do. One of the big things is put together a staff. Who's your offensive coordinator? Who's your defensive coordinator? Who are your assistants? And Philadelphia is this unique situation where that doesn't fall under Nick Sirianni's responsibilities. Dianna, you've reported this in the past that they hired Vic Fangio, they hired Kellen Moore. That wasn't Nick Sirianni going out and recruiting these guys and getting them in there. That was the front office. Jeff Stoutland, the best offensive line coach in the NFL. He was hired under Chip Kelly. So I think this year, given what Sirianni was asked to do, you can't really ask for anything else. They went 14-3. They exceeded everyone's expectations. If you said, hey, you're an NFL expansion franchise and you have your draft of every coach in the NFL, I personally would not be taking Nick Sirianni in the top 4, top 8. So good for this situation. It's a kind of a nuanced, complex answer.
You said all those things, and I thought it was brilliant. And I'm going to ask you a very straightforward question, and I'd like a very straightforward answer. Does Nick Sirianni survive the season if they get upset from the Packers? Does he coach next year in Philadelphia?
I think yes. I think if, as badly as last year went, ultimately they considered moves and they didn't make the move and they stuck with Nick Sirianni, to then come back and he goes 14-3. Now, listen, if they get blown out and he's fighting with fans or going and attacking Jordan, a lot of weird things are in play with Nick Sirianni. We know that. If he does something to embarrass the owner or the franchise, then I think we'll have a conversation. Wow. I think if it's a loss and you miss a field goal and it's kind of fluky, I would think that they would come back and run it back next season.
So, Sheil, I told Big Cat and PFT on their show recently that I have a big calendar in my kitchen. And I obviously try to give my husband a hard time by filling our calendar the next few Sundays with things, almost as if the Eagles won't be playing, right? It's just my way of kind of like giving them a hard time. That being said, I feel like I do need to sort of mentally get ready here for what if they do get bounced. So I guess my question for you, when you look at this Eagles team, tell me what goes wrong for them to lose and tell me what goes right for them to take this thing all the way to New Orleans. Start with bad.
Bad, I think it's what we talked about, honestly. I think if they lose this week, in a future week, we're going to be saying, man, that passing game was hard to watch. Defense, Jalen Hurts was holding on to the football. He's taken sacks on 10% of his dropbacks this year. That's not because of the offensive line. So you're saying, man, they found no consistency in the passing game. It wasn't good enough. They couldn't create explosive plays in the passing game, and that's why they lost. I really think that would be number one on my list by a long shot. If it goes right, you're saying this defense dominated. They've got every starter, by the way, on this team, offense and defense, is healthy going into the first. That doesn't happen in the NFL.
Tremendous.
Does not happen.
So they're healthy. I think Vic Fangio is awesome. I think their secondary is awesome. I think their defense can hold up against a lot of these offenses in the NFC. And then offensive line, run game, and Jalen Hurts could go on a heater. I mean, we talk about stuff before the playoffs, and then when the playoffs are over, we have brand new narratives. So like we could be like, man, he didn't have he was kind of up and down in the regular season, but he went on a month-long heater. They get to the Super Bowl, and now this is the guy we thought we saw in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs a couple years ago.
I've been with Vic Fangio for like 3 of my years in my career. I think he's an excellent coach, an excellent defensive mind, pretty simple scheme, but gets his players to play really, really hard for them. What do you think is going to be the key to Vic Fangio's defense? Because they're playing a lot of young guys, specifically against this run-heavy Matt LaFleur offense.
Yeah, I think obviously all the motion and stuff that Matt LaFleur uses, that's a big deal. How do you handle that? LaFleur's awesome. He can scheme up explosive plays. That's one. And then 2, can the Eagles win up front consistently? Because Jordan Love doesn't take sacks. I don't care if his elbow's falling off or what. I mean, no quarterback in the NFL, I think, is better at avoiding those sacks than Jordan Love. And if you look at this Eagles defense and you were saying, what's the weakness? Their edge rush, it's like some weeks it shows up. Other weeks it doesn't. It's really a defense that's built on the coverage and the secondary. So I think those are some of the key things I'm looking at for this matchup.
All right, we hammered you on all things Philly because you're so great on Philly, but you cover the whole league. You watch tons of film. You're on every topic. For these games coming up this weekend, is there an upset you got an eye on? Is there a team that you think that we're going to be talking about on Monday that we're like, oh, they did it?
The spreads in the AFC are so big that it's tough for me to look at those and say we're going to get an upset. So I come back to the NFC. And it's probably Washington. I know it's not I almost feel like a fraud. Like I'm going with the 3-point underdog as my big upset. Yeah. But I do look at Washington and some of the magic they've had with Jaden Daniels. And I think they've got a good shot to upset Tampa Bay, who obviously has had a great season as well.
I love that pick.
All right, my last one. Since this coaching cycle, the hiring, the firing, all that has been the story of the week, really, as we get set for the playoffs. Is there a matchup you want to see? Is there a coach that you want to see become the head coach of a team that's looking for one right now? What's the dream situation for you when you're looking at the landscape?
So obviously the most popular name, or one of the most popular names, is Ben Johnson. Now, I don't know Ben Johnson as a leader, culture, all the other things that go along with being a head coach. I feel like I don't know that enough about him, but schematically and what he's done offensively, pairing that with Drake May, who I think was probably underrated as a rookie, when you look at the circumstances that he performed under with that offensive line, and those pass catchers. Now, I know it's going to be Vrabel. I think it's going to be Vrabel. I think everybody thinks it's going to be Vrabel. But if you just ask me, man, if you could pair Ben Johnson and he can get the other stuff right and bring his offensive brilliance to Drake May, I think that would be a pretty fun pairing.
Wow. Let's go.
Sheil
And they got a lot of
going
money
for
to spend.
Yeah.
Brilliant play caller over the guy with the legacy.
Leader of men.
The leader of the
Vrabel, Hall of Famer.
Sheil, you are a leader of men, no doubt. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on Scoop City. We're definitely going to have you back on again. We appreciate all of your time, and we will see you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.